All right, welcome in everybody. Drop your names in the comments. We are doing the neon names once again. I'm back. Welcome to my live, guys. Everybody, drop your names, guys, in the comments. Who do we have next, everybody? All right, then we have is A May in the chat. Hey, you go, A May. Thank you for subscribing, A May. Who's next, everybody? Welcome to my live, guys. We are doing the neon names once again. Get your names down, everybody. Welcome to my live. Hi, Kavana. Here you go, Kavana. Next we have is Yaris. Next we have is Isabel. All right, next who do we have? Yeah, sure, you can give me as many names as you want, but just subscribe, guys. Everybody hit that subscribe button. All right, next we've got is Liz in the chat. Here you go, Liz. Then we've got is Stanley. Here you go, Stanley. Next we have is Micah in the chat. Here you go, Micah. Next name we've got is Myla in the chat. And then we have is next subscriber is Savannah in the chat. Next subscriber is One in the chat. And then my next subscriber is Carlos. And then my next subscriber is Annalise. And then my next subscriber is Mahdiya. And then my next subscriber is Sawyer. And then my next subscriber is Salvatore. And then my next subscriber is Chantel. And then my next subscriber is Jackson. How are you? All right, Jackson, here you go. And then my next subscriber is Leone. And then my next subscriber is Stelsey. And then my next subscriber is Elena. And then my next subscriber is Carmen. And then my next subscriber is Use Bea here. And then my next subscriber is River. And then my next subscriber is... Everybody hit that subscribe button and drop your names in the comments. We are doing the neon names once again. George in the chat. And then my next subscriber is Isaac. And then my next subscriber is Harvey. And then my next subscriber is Evelyn. And then my next subscriber is Adam. And then my next subscriber is Jojo. And then my next subscriber is Lennox. And then my next subscriber is Lily. And then my next subscriber is Emoken. And then my next subscriber is Ayan. And then my next subscriber is Oma. And then my next subscriber is Made. And then my next subscriber is Aubrey. And then my next subscriber is Poppy. And then my next subscriber is Mabel. And then my next subscriber is Marvin. And then my next subscriber is Layla. And then my next subscriber is Allison. And then my next subscriber is Layla. And then my next subscriber is Matcha. And then my next subscriber is Valentina. And then my next subscriber is Elena. And then my next subscriber is Mireya. And then my next subscriber is Jewel. And then my next subscriber is Isla. And then my next subscriber is Bailey. And then my next subscriber is Florence. And then my next subscriber is Isabella. And then my next subscriber is Adala. And then my next subscriber is Sela. And then my next subscriber is Ava. Then my next subscriber is Alessandra. Thank you, Alessandra, for liking. And then my next subscriber is Elifnaz. And then my next subscriber is Killian. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Janita. And then my next subscriber is Ale. Thank you for liking Ale. Then we have is Noah. Thank you for being my subscriber. And then my next subscriber is Cho. And then my next subscriber is Reza. And then my next subscriber is Nolan. And then my next subscriber is Tom. And then my next subscriber is Amelia. Thank you for liking, Amelia. And then my next subscriber is Cheyenne. And then my next subscriber is Hassan. And then my next subscriber is Wayne. And then my next subscriber is Noor. And then my next subscriber is Oliver. And then my next subscriber is Zia. And then my next subscriber is David. And then my next subscriber is Suella. And then my next subscriber is Lorena. And then my next subscriber is Kitty. And then my next subscriber is Philip. And then my next subscriber is Betul. And then my next subscriber is Alex. And then my next subscriber is Sharon. And then my next subscriber is Faris. And then my next subscriber is AD And then my next subscriber is Quinn. And then my next subscriber is Jess. And then my next subscriber is Jacob. And then my next subscriber is Adia. And then my next subscriber is Caitlin. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Isla. And then my next subscriber is Valda. And then my next subscriber is Bob. And then my next subscriber is Iris. Thank you for liking, Iris. And then my next subscriber is Jose. And then my next subscriber is Shifa. And then my next subscriber is Nicole. And then my next subscriber is Sana. And then my next subscriber is Jess. And then my next subscriber is Rose. And then my next subscriber is Sama. Let's get to the next page. And then my next subscriber is Isla. And then my next subscriber is Autumn. And then my next subscriber is Alex. And then my next subscriber is Ezra. And then my next subscriber is Rened. And then my next subscriber is Grayson. And then my next subscriber is Lana. And then my next subscriber is Adya. And then my next subscriber is Felix. And then my next subscriber is Ivy. And then my next subscriber is Jackson. And then my next subscriber is Nayla. And then my next subscriber is Chloe. And then my next subscriber is Sanjana. And then my next subscriber is Aryan. Thank you so much for liking. And then my next subscriber is Raphael. And then my next subscriber is Ramain. And then my next subscriber is Zaira. Thank you so much for liking. And then my next subscriber is Jess. And then my next subscriber is Adela. And then my next subscriber is Macy. And then my next subscriber is Charn. And then my next subscriber is Olivia. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Emma. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Seija. And then my next subscriber is Hania. And then my next subscriber is Yusuf. And then my next subscriber is Layla. And then my next subscriber is Kira. And then my next subscriber is Nia. And then my next subscriber is Jack. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Dante. And then my next subscriber is Olivia. And then my next subscriber is Bisan. And then my next subscriber is Ava. And then my next subscriber is Isla. And then my next subscriber is Jasmine. And then my next subscriber is Megan. Thank you so much for subscribing. And next we have is Lauren. Thank you for liking. And my next subscriber is Summer. And then my next subscriber is Aisha. And then my next subscriber is Ella. And then my next subscriber is Zach. And then my next subscriber is Sanola. And then my next subscriber is Risha. And then my next subscriber is Leah. And then my next subscriber is Kringle. And then my next subscriber is Albani. And then my next subscriber is Veko. And then my next subscriber is Tilda. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Ava. And then my next subscriber is Cole. And my next subscriber is Raymond. And then my next subscriber is Davian. And then my next subscriber is Layla. And then my next subscriber is Sandra. And then my next subscriber is Lai. And then my next subscriber is Hargan. And then my next subscriber is Robel. And then my next subscriber is Celeste. And then my next subscriber is Khadija. And then my next subscriber is Deora. And then my next subscriber is RA. And then my next subscriber is Sia. And then my next subscriber is Babe. And then my next subscriber is James. And then my next subscriber is Mia. And then my next subscriber is Jensia. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Holly. And then my next subscriber is Lexa. And then my next subscriber is Anya. And then my next subscriber is Satya. And then my next subscriber is Ariba. And then my next subscriber is Azima. And then my next subscriber is Mario. And then my next subscriber is Darcy. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Abe. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Kaitana. And then my next subscriber is Hayden. And then my next subscriber is David. And then my next subscriber is Riker. And then my next subscriber is Iman. Thank you for liking. Next we have is Everley. And my next subscriber is Emily. And then my next subscriber is Iman. And then my next subscriber is Luna. And then my next subscriber is Bo. And then my next subscriber is Elizabeth. And then my next subscriber is Leo. And then my next subscriber is Azim. Let's get to the next page, everybody. Okay, then my next subscriber in the chat is Sandra. And then my next subscriber is Maya. And then my next subscriber is Isabel. And then my next subscriber is Kay. And then my next subscriber is Zoe. And then my next subscriber is Ella. And then my next subscriber is Cairo. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Zenat. And then my next subscriber is Maya. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Jade. And then my next subscriber is Logan. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Ethan. And then my next subscriber is Miracle. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Nathan. Happy birthday. Have a great day. And then my next subscriber is Laken. And then my next subscriber is Marley. And then my next subscriber is Niam. And then my next subscriber is Julia. And then my next subscriber is Neha. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Khadija. And then my next subscriber is Carissa. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Millie. And then my next subscriber is Thomas. And then my next subscriber is Dakrays. And then my next subscriber is Isaiah. And then my next subscriber is Mila. And then my next subscriber is Akane. And then my next subscriber is Nikita. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Maya. And then my next subscriber is Lucy. And then my next subscriber is Adeline. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Abo. And then my next subscriber is Raphael. And then my next subscriber is Scarlett. And then my next subscriber is Nayam. And then my next subscriber is Andrea. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Abhani. And then my next subscriber is Javeria. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Keziana. Thank you for liking, Keziana. And then my next subscriber is Mariam. And then my next subscriber is Remy. And then my next subscriber is Lexay. And then my next subscriber is UK. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Calesia. And then my next subscriber is Anne Leah. And then my next subscriber is Ilior. And then my next subscriber is AJ. And then my next subscriber is Tiffany. Thank you so much for liking. And then my next subscriber is Rayleigh. And then my next subscriber is Sod. And then my next subscriber is Adeya. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Majesté. And then my next subscriber is Ivy. And then my next subscriber is Rahima. And then my next subscriber is Mackenzie. And then my next subscriber is Gracie. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Lily. And then my next subscriber is Luna. And then my next subscriber is John. Thank you, Naim, for saying that. And then my next subscriber is Caitlin. And then my next subscriber we have is Demarcus. And then my next subscriber is Nyasha. And then my next subscriber is Paxton. And then my next subscriber is Olivia. And then my next subscriber is Fazir. Thank you for liking. And then my next subscriber is Dilnor. And then my next subscriber is Kaden. And then my next subscriber is Neda. And then my next subscriber is Kala. All right, guys, I would go for a 15-minute break and I'll be back. So be there. See you all. I love you.